This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
I'm Andy Katz from ESPN, along with my co-host Rick Klein from ABC News. On the latest edition of Capital Games, we're going to be joined by 538's Nate Silver. We're going to discuss comparing, predicting politics and sports, and Nate kind of leaves us with a pretty good prediction about the NCAA tournament.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
I was in Chicago Friday and Saturday, or in Evanston, which is neighboring to Chicago. I didn't go to the parade,
right?
No, which it started at Wrigley Field and it went down to Grant Park. I was in Evanston, so I was nowhere near it, but obviously it was on every television, everywhere you looked in any direction. It was the 7th largest gathering of people in human history. Now, obviously, going back hundreds of years, the population has exploded, so comparatively speaking, but if you really think about it, it was the largest gathering of people in American history. All the other previous 6, I looked it up because I was just fascinated to see what they were. They were like funerals, and like one of them was the funeral of the Ayatollah Khomeini, and I mean, things like that. They weren't celebrations of baseball teams winning championships. None of them took place in the United States. We'll get it for you here in a second.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
One of them was a Rod Stewart concert in Brazil.
I was going to say, was any other a sporting event?
Here it is. No,
okay.
One of them is a pilgrimage in India in 2013. Okay. The next is a festival in Iraq. The next was a funeral in India, then a funeral in Iran, then a papal gathering in the Philippines, then World Youth Day, and then the Cubs celebration rally in Chicago.
Wow.
These were the largest gatherings of human beings in the history of our civilization.
That's amazing.
To celebrate a baseball team winning a championship. But I mean, it was fun, and obviously, I'm glad everyone had such a good time, and obviously we waited a long time for this.
Yeah.
But if you just look at what it's in the, again, pilgrimage, festival, funeral, papal gathering, World Youth Day, Cubs parade.
So there's no doubt, even though they were 7th in total amount, they were highest in percentage of drunk people.
Most likely.
No doubt about that.
It was number 1 in the U.S. If you look at what all these in front of you have
Philippines,
in common.
Iran, India,
none of them took place
Iraq,
in the United
India.
States.
Yeah.
This was the biggest gathering of people in the history of our country.
We're not shocked, though, by that, are we?
I was a little shocked by that.
You?
But yes, I mean, if you had asked me what was the largest gathering in the history of the United States, I don't know that I could have given you a guess. And I don't know what it was prior to this. But I would not have guessed, the Cubs will wind up gathering more people in one place than anything that has ever happened in the 250-year history of the United States of America.
Trying to think of what could have happened that could have gathered more.
I would have thought, I don't even know, funerals, marches, celebrate. I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, I guess this is as good a thing as you could have.
108 years. I mean, it's a long time.
It is. It was 108 years.
Time.
There were more people at this thing than I think we had as a nation 108 years ago.
Exactly.
All right, Mike and Mike. So as we dive into the football, let's do it in the form of a 5-point stance brought to you by Geico, where 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit them at geico.com or call 1-800-947-GEICO. Top 5 stories from an NFL Sunday, and it starts with Dak Prescott, Mike, who wins his 7th straight start. Now, the Cowboys at 7-1, they played the winless Browns yesterday, and they took care of them exactly as you'd expect them to.
Right.
Zeke had a big day. Witten had a big day. But Dak Prescott continues, Mike, to get better and better.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's, the third rookie since the 70 merger, the merger in 70 to win at least 7 straight games. He joins Ben Roethlisberger and Kyle Orton. Sometimes there's a name thrown in there that's kind of, out of whack a little bit. But the talk, it sounds like it's on the tail end of it. Don't you think, of starting Romo again? I believe that's got to be not even a consideration anymore between what he's doing. And then you have Zeke Elliott's rush for 891 yards, third most by a player in first 8 career games. It's only behind Adrian Peterson and Eric Dickerson. Pretty impressive again. And I still think a lot of that, these guys are excellent players, but that O-line in front of them is getting the job done as well.
They took Zeke out of that game late. I mean, it's a blowout in the second half, so they didn't have the – he could have easily gone for more. Ben Roethlisberger back, not better than ever. Returned from his meniscus injury. The Steelers punted the first 7 times they had the ball and really were never – Mike Wallace caught a 95-yard touchdown, and the game was basically over.
Game was over, and I actually had Wallace in my DraftKings, so I was pretty happy about that. But a lot of people saying, what is the matter with the Pittsburgh Steelers? Just last week I was saying New England's number 1. I'm like, and then there's that group of Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Oakland, which we'll get to, and Denver, which we'll get to. who's next up in there. Pittsburgh, though, I guess the stat shows it as well. Ben Roethlisberger coming off of an injury. They fell to 2-6 in his career when he comes back from an injury. So the stat says that they don't do that well when he comes back from it. I got to believe they're going to pick it up with some.
Yeah, with him being hurt and now him coming back, I think the one team that you are worried about right now that could get better in a hurry would be the Steelers.
Nobody's, as we'll say, nobody's running away in that division right now.
Right, they're still tied.
Right.
Atop the division. How about the Detroit Lions? The Detroit Lions are 5-4. They have trailed in the fourth quarter of all 9 of their games this year.
It's unreal.
And I tell you what, Matthew Stafford has some moments that makes you shake your head.
Yeah,
he threw one of the worst interceptions of the season yesterday, but he is as good in late game situations as any quarterback in the league.
I agree, and it's gotten better over the last few years with the turnovers. He still does. I'm with you. He has that one you shake your head every now and then. Golden Tate with a great catch on the sideline in overtime, and then horrible tackling by Minnesota, and that's where we'll get into Minnesota on the other side of this. But really, there's only one other team that's trailed in the fourth quarter of every game this year, and that's the Cleveland Browns, and they're 0-9.
Right.
They continued to trail when they're all zeros on the clock.
Yes, they've trailed going into the weekend. Ryan Fitzpatrick struggled once again in a Jets loss to the Dolphins, throwing his 5th red zone interception this season. And that pass, I don't even know, it was a jump ball to no one.
Well, I mean, again, there's a miscommunication. We've seen it before. So it's either quarterback or wide receiver. Somebody didn't get it. When something is that far off, there's obviously miscommunication.
But I turned after the game to watch Ray Lucas, who does a post game on the local channel in New York, talking about that, and he said it doesn't matter if there's miscommunication in that situation. The quarterback is the last line of defense. Yeah. You cannot that was a ball, in his words, that had to be thrown into the 5th row of the stands, and instead, now look, they got a break on the dropped punt.
Yeah, they did.
It was a crazy game yesterday. We'll get to them in a couple of minutes. And then finally, Mike, and this is where we'll rest. The Raiders beat the Broncos on Sunday Night Football, and they did so in somewhat decisive fashion. The Raiders now alone in first place in the AFC West, the latest they have been in 5 years. The Raiders, Mike, are a really, really solid football team, and they're getting better week by week.
Well, they are, and what stepped up last night, quite honestly, was a Raider defense. That was the part about, okay, are they going to come along? The offense is coming along. Can the defense come along? In 4 straight 3-and-outs, Denver started that game. That hasn't happened. The Raiders haven't gone 4 straight drives to start a game and to make the other team punt since 2012. They stopped Denver 4 straight first drives, or the 4 first drives of that game. And then on the other side, Oakland, Derek Carr at 108 yards passing in the first quarter alone. It was 6-0 after the first quarter, 20-10 at halftime. But there's another team. The defense played well, and we'll talk about that O-line as well and the money they've put into that and just how much that's paying off.
Well, look, I mean, they right now, if the whole world is trying to figure out who's the second best team, because clearly it feels like the Patriots are the best team.
Yes.
You know, Dallas on one side has to get consideration and maybe a few others. And I think the Raiders have to be another. If you look at the complete, now obviously their defense gives up a lot of points early in the season, but week by week they're getting better and better.
That's why I brought them up first. I mean, that Oakland offense, we've seen they were 5th in rushing, and they did nothing to deter that in going for over 200 yards against that Denver rush defense. And they're keeping their quarterback clean. They and Washington, I believe it's Washington and is it Dallas? Who are the 3 teams that have given up the least amount of sacks. I know Washington's one of them, and I know the Raiders the other. I may be wrong on Dallas, but they're not getting Carr hit. They have $38 million of cap money on that offensive line. That's the most in the league. They spent money on them, and it's paying off. I think they all average about 380 pounds up front. They're monsters and just lay on you. But, yeah, I mean, you look at what they're doing now. They're a game ahead of the Chiefs. The Chiefs already had a bye, and the Chiefs have beaten the Raiders in Oakland. So that's still that one's hanging on them right there. They'll get the Chiefs one more time in Kansas City. Oakland's 2-1 in their division, but that one loss is at home to Kansas City, who also just has 2 losses. But, man, they are playing extremely well. And Denver, listen, if they're playing from behind, you know, they like to run the ball out in front and let the defense get after the quarterback. But guess what? If the other team's offense doesn't have to throw the ball and can hand it off, then they're in great shape. I can't believe it. About 7 minutes ago, Derek Carr threw a pass when I thought they were going to just pound the ball to what was almost an interception that could have been costly for them. But that's the problem for Denver. They can't play catch-up ball right now with that quarterback. They need to run the ball, and they need their defense to be able to pin their ears back and get after a passing quarterback.
Bear in mind, Denver playing without two of their corners last night, and they've lost the running back. Right. So injuries are a factor right now for them as well. But Derek Carr very much right now in the zone. Brought to you by AutoZone. When you get the right part or helpful advice you need, it helps you get in your zone. So stop into AutoZone the next time you or your car need a little something, and let them help you get in the zone with AutoZone. Let me give you the numbers on Derek Carr. This is the pace that he is currently on. Now, I told you last week, Derek Carr would be my vote for MVP of the league. I believe that when the season is over, Tom Brady will be the MVP of the league. But right now, I said it last week, and nothing has changed. I would vote for Derek Carr for MVP of the league. The current pace he is on would leave him at 12-4 would be his team's record. He's on pace to throw 30 touchdowns and 5 picks with about 4,500 passing yards. The entire list of players in NFL history to win 12 games in a season with 30 touchdowns, less than 10 interceptions, and over 4,000 passing yards is Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers twice, and Tom Brady 4 times.
Yeah.
Derek Carr's on pace to do it, and he's 25 years old.
He's incredible what he's doing. I think at this point it's a 3-person race, and we have a decent amount of time to go with Brady, I think, with Matt Ryan and with Derek Carr. Matt Ryan's putting up pinball numbers, and if their team goes on, goes and wins the division, we know how much voters love those pinball numbers. So, but Derek Carr's right there. And then you talk about youth, 25 years old, and the direction they're going with the receivers that they have. Crabtree, new life. Cooper, excellent receiver. The O-line I keep talking about, and if the defense comes along, I mean, you're starting to talk about two of the better teams in each conference, the Raiders and the Cowboys. Does that bring back a little distant history, for the league and those two teams? I'm not going to get ahead of myself and get too crazy just yet, but they're playing extremely well. We know the Cowboys are as well. The Patriots are lurking there as still, you're voting them the best team in the league right now. But it's a good thing to see, I think.
All right, Mike and Mike, so going back over some of those that we touched on, the Cowboys yesterday and Zeke Elliott and Dak Prescott, so they have the young guys getting it done, and they also had yesterday the old guy getting it done. Yeah. Jason Witten had 8 catches for 134 yards in his 155th consecutive start. That breaks a tie with Leroy Jordan for the longest streak in Cowboys history. Jason Witten, in case you're thinking he's been around forever, you're right. He has now started more consecutive games than any Dallas Cowboy in history. And for those of us who go back a ways with the league, and you think about all those players the Cowboys have had going back to the 60s and the 70s and the 90s, and now this group here trying to wake up the echoes, and they're doing it with these young kids and then a little veteran leadership, and it's Witten, Mike, who I think is providing a bunch of that.
I feel like Witten's been in the league for 30 years. It feels like he has been in for 30 years, and he's just solid, go-to guy, bails you out. A lot of times not going to be that big wow play, but it's going to be good enough play, and then you get games like that. And it's basically what's the coverage giving you, and Dak Prescott is smart enough to know where to go to the ball when the coverage is giving you. Throw the ball to your tight end. It's exactly what he's doing.
Are the Steelers in trouble is one of the big questions as we recap some of the those games that we did in there. Again, Roethlisberger now 2-6. In his first game back from injury, and as you watch just how rusty he looked when he went out there yesterday, you find yourself wondering, was it really the right move to play him? You get it, right? Yep. You want to get your big guy back out there. He's Roethlisberger. He's a great player. He's big and tough, and he's going to but if he doesn't practice all week long and he's barely ready to play, they punt the first 7 times they get the ball and 10 of the first 12. And so Herman Edwards last night, as he was talking about this, sort of put the two thoughts together on those two teams, on rushing Roethlisberger back, getting him out there with basically having not played in weeks and not practicing at all, and the notion that you might put Romo in that situation if you ever rushed him back out onto the field. Here was Herman.
Ben went in the game without practicing for 2 weeks. Okay? Did you see how he looked today?
Yeah, we're going to get to it.
Well, if Tony Romo, whatever game, if they decide to play him, he might look a lot like Ben. He's been out for 2 months. Not 2 weeks, 2 months. He hadn't played football. So it's almost not fair to Tony Romo as this thing continues to go on, right?
This is a team in Pittsburgh that needs to live by the offense, much like we talked about Minnesota needs to live by the defense. And right now, because the defense for Pittsburgh, Cam Hayward leads them in sacks with 3. They're 31st in the league in sacks. Their defense isn't playing that well, and they need the high octane of Ben, of Le'Veon Bell, and of Antonio Brown. And they didn't get that, and we've seen. I gave the stat, you gave the stat. When Ben comes back from injury, he's now 2-6. And does it come back a little early? And maybe we should start giving Baltimore a little bit of credit. They're second overall in defense in yards allowed per game. They have a really good defense. Maybe we should give them a little bit of love as well for what they are doing. Not a juggernaut offense by any stretch of the imagination, but a really, really good defense, as we keep talking about how defense is winning more and more in the league.
Well, they got off to a good start, a fast start this year, the Ravens did, at 3-0. It felt like it all got away from them practically immediately, and now all of a sudden they wake up at the midway point of their season and they're tied for the division.
Exactly right.
And what both those teams have done, particularly the Steelers, if you agree with me that they're the better team, have done, is they've let Cincinnati hang around.
Yes.
Cincinnati has played their way out of it early this season, and the division has let them hang around.
Yep, they're sitting at 3-4-1, while Pittsburgh and Baltimore are both 4-4. That's not a pretty division at all, just like the NFC North. Not pretty at all. Some couple of ugly divisions there, but you're right. They've let Cincy hang around, and no one's going to run away there, so we'll see. I'm with you. I think Pittsburgh is the best team, but, tell Baltimore that. As they sit there and did what they did. Baltimore is 2-0 in the division right now, sitting at 4-4 with a nice win yesterday.
So that's where we stand in some of those divisions around the National Football League. Quickly on the Jets, I don't for the life of me understand why they will continue to play Ryan Fitzpatrick, as the coach said yesterday that they would. There are two reasons why you might bench a quarterback. I said this exactly a couple of weeks ago. It's only all the more true now. When they decided to bench Fitzpatrick, it was the right decision for two reasons. One, I thought their season was over, and so it was time to play the kids.
Right.
And two, he has played his way out of the lineup. He has played in such a way that he deserves to be benched. Well, both of those are even more true now. At 3-6, if you just look, Mike, and you just rattle off the list of teams in the conference that are ahead of them, forget the division. New England is 7-1, so they won't lose anywhere near 6 games this year.
It's ridiculous.
My point is the division is clearly over.
The division is over, and the wild card right now, you're dealing with two teams coming out of the AFC West with 2-3 losses, so that puts them 4-3 losses behind.
Right.
They're right there.
Plus all those teams in the North.
Oh, absolutely.
Plus the Indianapolis wins yesterday. Yeah. Plus everyone in their own division is ahead of them.
Buffalo and Miami sitting at 4-4.
They have no chance.
Couldn't agree more.
Of making the playoffs.
Got to be done. Bryce Petty's got to play.
Why not?
I have no clue. Now, we've seen him say Fitz is going to be the quarterback, and then he wasn't, and Geno Smith went in. So
he went very definitive on it yesterday.
Okay.
I watched the press conference from him yesterday. He's going to have a tough time walking that one back.
I don't know why.
The only reason I can think is that after this week they have a bye. So they have their bye so that maybe you would just sort of give yourself 2 weeks to get the kid ready. If it was Geno Smith, maybe they'd give him the ball now because he's played.
Maybe you could see that because they're playing the Rams. And the one thing, while the Rams aren't a great football team, their best part of the team
They rush the quarterback.
They rush the quarterback. So maybe you don't want to do that to Bryce Petty right off the bat. So maybe I could see that then. That could absolutely be the reason. But it can't be any longer than that. If it doesn't happen then, game by Bryce Petty, that would be a very, very stunning move.
The best of Mike and Mike.
We welcome in our Chicago pal, Tom Waddle, who joins us every Monday. We talk football with him, but a quick thought as he hosts afternoons on ESPN 1000 and has for years and has been a Chicago staple for years. And you were there in Cleveland, and you were telling us during the break that in Game 7 there were moments when it was the craziest place you've ever been in your life.
Look, it wasn't the cleanest played baseball game that I've ever seen. It was arguably the most dramatic sporting event I've ever been at. And when Davis hit that home run in the 8th to tie it up, I thought Progressive Field was coming down. I mean, it was crazy. Just the ups and downs and some of the strategic moves that worked or didn't work or left you scratching your head. But at the end of the day, the rain delay gave the Cubs an opportunity to kind of collect themselves. They had a team meeting, and they came out and started a rally, and they finished the job. This was the best team in baseball all season long, so for them to win the World Series isn't surprising to me. But a tip of the cap to the Cleveland Indians. To do what they did and get past the adversity that they faced, Look, again, I've been to several different sporting events. I'm not so sure that Game 7 of this year's World Series wasn't the most dramatic sporting event I've ever been
Great
in.
for both sets of fans
Yeah.
as well. We had Jessica Mendoza on the day after as well, and she said when their compound was across the street, so they were running back and forth outside the stadium to inside, and said she happened to be outside when Davis hit that home run. And while everybody was going nuts inside, said cars were stopping on the road, people getting out of their car and running around. I mean, had to be an incredible moment, but the Cubs ended up winning. Green, you were here Friday. We had Kyle Schwarber on, and he said he basically just got up. And I don't mean getting up for the morning of the parade, just got up from basically after the World Series and going on as long as he did. He had just got up that morning to go into the parade.
Put what that kid did into perspective.
Oh, my God.
Missed the entire season. Do you realize he's played 69 regular season baseball games? He still has not played a half of a full season. And he is tied for the Cubs' lead in the history of their organization in terms of postseason home runs. He's now fifth in the history of Major League Baseball in OPS in the postseason for guys who have had at least 45 at-bats. That's a list that includes Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. I mean, it's just remarkable. A lot of guys did a lot of great things, but what he was able to do to
Coming
come
off
back.
of what he did. Yeah, he talked a lot about it with us, and he actually did say there was really no shot of him playing the field. When they went back to Chicago, I was asking how. He said no. He said that wasn't.
Did you guys see them on Saturday Night Live this weekend?
I did not.
I didn't see it.
Three of the Cubs were on it. It was David Ross, Anthony Rizzo, and Dexter Fowler. They were in two sketches. One of them they sang with Bill Murray. And in another one, they played male strippers. So it was fun. So to the victors go the spoils, and those were the victors for the Chicago Cubs. Tommy Waddle is here. All right, to the football on the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. As Tommy joined us here, I said to him, what's the number one story in football this weekend in your mind? And you immediately said the Raiders.
I did. I thought this was one of those inflection point games for them. At home, a place where they've lost two of their ball games. They have been magnificent on the road. But at home, could they handle the king of their division and, quite frankly, the king of the NFL as the Denver Broncos pulled into town? One of those games that I think when you're led by a rookie quarterback, or not rookie, a young quarterback, who has played so well, and they have so many young pieces to this puzzle, to get a win like this can propel you to even bigger and better things. I thought it was a one of those signature victories. I was questioning whether or not this Raiders defense could do enough to kind of propel them to the top of the AFC West. They have improved each and every week, but the story here is their young quarterback, their young weapons, and that offensive line that they pointed out quite often last night was just mauling the Denver Broncos and rushed for better than 200 yards. I just physically, mentally, and emotionally, they came away from that game feeling great about themselves.
You know, it's one of those situations of where are you in that game? Who's going to be able to do what they do? So when Oakland gets a lead and eventually Denver has to pass their way back into it, Trevor Siemian, he had a tough night. He definitely had a tough night, and that's not their offense.
Right.
And for the Raiders, their offense, they do have great weapons, but if they can just snap the ball, hand the ball off, and have that line, maul people, that's what they want their bread and butter to be, and that's exactly the position they were in. Now, that doesn't mean Derek Carr can't pass them back into it. They do have that luxury as well. Tommy, I mentioned early on that the defense, to me, is the part of their game that picked up. Now, it wasn't a monster offense in Denver, but that's a part I think that's been getting better and better. You have to say the two best lines in all of football right now have to be the Raiders and the Dallas Cowboys.
No question.
And there are some lines that are getting big. We talked about the O-line kind of going backward a little bit, and that's been more when subs have come in. It's not as deep anymore. You get veteran players together, playing together, not going through injury and being able to play as a group. You can see the effects of that. And I'll mention again, $38 million is their cap number on the offensive line. That is the most in the NFL for offensive line. So that's putting your money where your running attack is.
Well, and I give both of those organizations a ton of credit. They identified that's how we want to build our team. We're going to build our team inside out. The Dallas Cowboys did it by the draft. For the most part, the Oakland Raiders have done more of this with free agency.
And Osemele, absolutely, and they re-sign and pen them. But the interior, as you mentioned, what they did, and Dallas will have to go through it. They'll have to pay Zach Martin, I believe, after this year or this year, and I think after this year they'll probably want to pay him and get it over with. It'll be this year or next year, so they'll have a lot of money in there. Think
about what these Raiders have done now. Again, they took care of the division champs and the defending Super Bowl champs in their own building, so they knocked the king of the mountain off the mountain. And on the road, think about what they've done. Their 5 road victories have all been against teams that live in the central or eastern time zone, and all 5 of those wins were 1 o'clock kicks, which I don't care what anybody says. Yeah. When the ball's in the air, your body says it's 10 a.m. And for them to do what they've done on the road has just been remarkable. So, to me, they're arguably the best story. Them and the Dallas Cowboys, and, of course, the Patriots without Tom Brady. Those are the 3 best stories in football.
Right, and so the Raiders playing extremely well. And, Mike, they've also done a really smart thing. They drafted a quarterback that, at this point, you're going to look back at that and say, how in the world did this guy fall into the second round? When you look at Blake Bortles going ahead of him, you look at Manziel going ahead of him, Bridgewater, obviously, with the injury. But he falls into the second round, and look what a good job they've done, to your point, of bringing him along. What do you need? Get him an offensive line. Go out and spend some money on an offensive line so we don't get the quarterback killed, which is what happened to his brother. Then go out and draft a great receiver with a very high pick the next year. You almost never see receivers go as high in the draft as Amari Cooper did, but everyone said he's a polished NFL-ready player, so go out and get him a player that can work, he can work with and grow with. So they've done a good job of bringing in a quarterback and developing him the right way. And all of a sudden, the Raiders, if you're trying to think of a team that could be a real threat to the Patriots this year, you and I both said the Steelers. Why not the Raiders? What can't they do?
Be the Raiders.
They can run it. They can fling it all over the place. I tell you what, Derek Carr is not afraid of getting into a shootout with anybody.
He's not.
You want him to throw for 500 yards, he'll do it.
He's not, but let's also remember that the Chiefs beat them in Oakland, so they have to overcome that one. That's their only division loss, and it was a home loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, who only have 2 losses as well, but already had their bye, so they're a game behind. So we'll see. We said that we both, I think, picked Kansas City to win that division.
You'll agree with this, I think, Mike.
Right now, they'd have both wild cards as well.
Yeah, you got to learn how. It sounds simple in the master of the obvious statement of the day, but you have to learn how to win. And when you are a team that's led by a young quarterback, and you're an organization that hasn't won consistently over the last several years, you got to learn how to win. This was like I said, this is one of those inflection points in the season where they kind of mentally, physically, and in the standings, they got over the hump a little bit, and it's certainly something that they can build on. But they have been quite impressive. Still a little bit concerned about their defense. They're giving up 400 yards and 25 points per game, but those numbers are starting to descend because they've been better over the last several weeks. So if they can get that defense cranked up, they are for sure a huge threat.
Raiders only have 4 players over the age of 30 on their roster. Meanwhile, the Broncos, Mike, can never underestimate the value or the whatever the opposite of value is of losing players after you win a championship. Yeah. They lost a lot of guys in the middle of their defense.
They did.
The Broncos are allowing 110 yards rushing a game between the tackles this year. That's second worst in the league.
Yep, right up the gut. And they have a team in their division in the Raiders who love to do that. They have a big back and a big line, so that doesn't bode well.
Now, you lost Malik Jackson. You lost Danny Trevathan. Yep. Last night you were playing with an injured Brandon Marshall, and you were without 2 of your top cornerbacks if you're the Broncos. So you need to get healthy in Denver.
When you need something hearty to fuel up fast, grab a can of Campbell's Chunky Soup. Packed with big chunks of meat and vegetables. And now in 50 flavors like Chunky Chicken Noodle, New England Clam Chowder, and Sirloin Burger with country vegetables. So whether you're leading meetings at the office or your son's football team to sweet championship victory, fuel up with the meaty goodness of Campbell's Chunky Soup. Campbell's Chunky Soup, the hearty way to fuel your game. Find your flavor today at Chunky.com.
To Smooth Louis Riddick, who is here to talk football with us as he is every Monday. What a pleasure, as always. How are you, Mr. Riddick?
I'm doing great. This is a good weekend now.
Yes, it is.
Good weekend.
Let me see if I sensed this correctly, because I feel like I watch football with you every Sunday, despite the fact that we're in different places, because I follow your Twitter feed.
Yeah, I'm a little active yesterday.
You seemed salty yesterday.
I was a little. I was. Hey, I was getting after some people, man. There's some people who kept challenging me about stuff, and I'm going, why is so? Usually, Granny, I'm good. I'm like, okay. It's Twitter, right? Yesterday I was like, oh, no. Not having this today.
Having it, huh?
No, not today.
It was a salty Louis Riddick. And you do that thing that a lot of people do. I noticed Stephen A. Smith does this as well. You respond to things that people are sending you without including what it was you're responding to. So you're tweeting
Sometimes,
of angrily, but I don't know at what. I can tell that you've been provoked by something, but I
usually include what people said. But yesterday, a few times, I was just so annoyed at what they said. I was just like, let me just hit this back real quick.
So you're like, you're saying blah, blah, blah.
I usually don't bite.
Hey,
I usually don't bite.
I am with
but
you
sometimes
about
I do.
The whole Twitter world. I usually don't either, and I got sucked into the Danny Kanell trolling yesterday.
You got reeled in hook, line, and sinker by the troll of all trolls.
Booger McFarland even texted me after that and said, dude, don't get sucked into the Danny Kanell troll. He is an unbelievable troll, but every now and then he says stuff that you just want to sack him if he's there.
I picture Danny on Twitter sort of like, and I don't fish, Mike, but you do. Yeah. Isn't there something where you'll like set a little thing that'll pop up if you've got a bite?
Oh, no doubt.
Right? No, you're sitting back drinking a beer, a bobber. Yeah. So I picture Danny sort of sitting back, and then like when someone who's verified responds to him, he has a little bobber that pops up. I got one.
Yeah. There's no doubt he sits there and goes, let's see.
This way.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no question.
And you know who was on the hook?
It's Golic.
Yeah.
Yesterday it was Golic.
Big fish.
Okay, let's pick up where we were at the end of the hour. We were talking about the Eagles. And we all know Philly, right? So the town is going crazy, and I was looking at a ton of tweets yesterday. You know, we started out 3-0. It set the expectations. I don't want to hear about rookie quarterback and all that kind of stuff. Let's just pull the reins back a little bit. There was not one of the circumstances in which he went for it on fourth down yesterday that I disagreed with personally. Sure. Now, it's easy to look back at the end of a game that you lose by 5 and say you left those points on the field, but you also had the ball at the end of the game with a chance to win.
You did.
Some of the play calls are a little bit questionable, but it had been working for you a lot of the season. You are still playing with a rookie quarterback with basically as limited a college resume as any that we've ever had come into the league and play immediately. So I get it. If I'm a fan, I'm probably throwing things at the TV too, but I'm not going to join the chorus of screaming and yelling about Doug Peterson right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I don't disagree with the strategy either, especially when you're going against a football team that, as they showed yesterday, the New York Giants and their offense, that can light you up pretty quickly. Because I think the Eagles yesterday had a couple other flaws exposed by the New York Giants, mainly their cornerback play, which they're just not good enough. They're just not good enough on the perimeter. So Doug knows that anytime I'm getting in the red zone, I have to maximize, the point total I get when I'm down in there. But the play call, you're right. Look, that first fourth down that Carson runs, it really wasn't even a zone read. It wasn't a read option because no one went for Darren Sproles. Everyone knew that this really was a design run to Carson Wentz into the boundary. There's like 4 defenders sitting there waiting for him. So you go, okay, well, where's Ryan Matthews? You didn't have a better play call as far as, if you need a couple yards here, that you have to have some play calls that you can go to. And then the second one, to Darren Sproles, where, Tommy, I heard you talking about it, where it was a little bit, really, it was like an outside zone play. Why is Ryan Matthews not in the game? Why don't you have a 200, 215-pound back like him or somebody who can hit that ball north and south quick, go up over the top, something like that?
Well, if you're going to get Darren Sproles involved, get him involved in space where he's at his best.
When you're down there, though, you know how this goes, right? Those plays have to develop quick.
Yeah.
And they have to, you have to be getting north and south in a hurry, get the yardage, and then get onto a new set of downs. It can't be something that's slow developing like that. It just can't.
So overall, we see what Wentz did early on, and since the Eagles' Week 4 bye, Wentz has been the worst quarterback in the NFL by our own guys. Their points above average metric. Mm-hmm. He's been 11 points worse than an average quarterback over that span, and worse than the league by that metric. Is it more on him or what's going on around? You do lose Lane Johnson, so that hurts your O-line, hurts your running game. The defense isn't playing as well now as they played early on. Are other contributing factors, I would say, but does he look different?
You knew that it wasn't just going to stay as hot and as nice as it was early on in the season because of the fact that at some point the rookie part of him was going to shine through, and he doesn't have the supporting cast that will necessarily continue to carry him like, say, Dak could if he hits some kind of lull here. They just don't have the perimeter weapons, man. They don't have anybody that they can get down the field and really beat one-on-one coverage that can always bail him out. It's just not there. The offensive line, you're right. Lane Johnson's not there. Right tackle has been an issue. Jason Peters has been inconsistent. Jason Kelsey at center has been inconsistent. Alan Barber at guard has been inconsistent. They're not capturing the line of scrimmage They don't have the benefit of a guy like Ezekiel Elliott who they can just turn and hand the ball to and just say, hey, look, you know what, Carson, calm down here for a few plays. We're just going to hammer this team for a little bit and you get your wits about you. It's not like that. Every play has to be exact for this football team. They have no margin for error.
Well, compare them to the Dallas Cowboys if we're going to do that, because Dak is a rookie and so is Wentz.
Yeah.
Dallas has got a better offensive line. Dallas has got a better running back. Dallas has got better perimeter weapons than Carson has. Now, that's not to take Carson Wentz off the hook, because he's got to make better decisions and do things in a more efficient manner as well. A lot of drop passes from the Eagles wide receivers.
I mean, so that's what I was going to say. I mean, their receiver, was it Aguilar, who doesn't want to hear about drops? Well, then stop doing it.
Yeah, Jordan Matthews is among the league leaders in drop passes. Dorial Green-Beckham, I think he has 30 targets. He's dropped like 3 of them already. 3 or 4 passes like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that are just kind of crumbling around him, too.
There's also the question of there seems to be a lot of running of Darren Sproles between the tackles. That seems to be like their favorite play. Now, Sproles is a terrific player, has been for years in the league, because you get him out in space and he makes people miss. I don't know that running Darren Sproles between the tackles as often as I feel like I see them doing that is necessarily playing to his strength.
Yeah, they just don't have the people that they trust to do what they want to do. So whereas earlier in the year, I mean, Doug was really on a roll as far as the play calling and trying to emphasize the short passing game, the screen game, the draw game, getting Darren out in space. Well, now teams kind of got hip to that a little bit. They're kind of coming down on this offense and squeezing this offense and constricting it, knowing that you can't beat them deep. And when that happens, look, your margin for error is like slim and none, and that's where they're at right now.
Look what they're doing now. If they're not a threat to run the football on you consistently, you'll see a lot of two-man, or you see a lot of cover 2.
Yep.
You're not threatened by the running game. You're going to disrupt the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. You're going to make Carson hold it just a split second longer.
There you go.
And, now you got yourself a handful of problems.
And when you start to get exposed on the corners, as they are on the defensive side of the ball, that's just more pressure on the play caller on offense going, we got to score. We can't accept 3. We have to get 7 because this other team may light us up in any minute here. So it's all kind of coming together in not a good way.
All right, Lewis, give me some Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. The Cowboys currently have, let's call it a 1.5-game lead in their division. They're up 2 on the Giants, but remember, the Giants opened the season with a win in Dallas. Mm-hmm. That could wind up being significant. It's the only game the Cowboys have lost all year. They've won 7 straight. So in your view, they're also fairly comfortably ahead. No one in the conference has... Well, Seattle only has 2 losses going into their game tonight, but they're 4-2-1. So the Cowboys feel like they have a little bit of a comfortable cushion in the NFC. Do you think it is likely that they're just going to run away and hide, steamroll in, and be the number 1 seed? Or do you think there are still sort of bumps out there in the road to be had and that this thing will tighten itself up before we get to the conclusion?
Yeah, I think the bumps, Greeny, would come from some kind of unforeseen circumstance like an injury to one of the key players. But right now, look, we talked about a couple weeks ago about the fact that you don't want to disrupt the kind of mojo, the kind of chemistry, the kind of camaraderie that they got going on. This team's very, very confident on top of being talented right now. So, I mean, you saw yesterday right out of the gate, they established with Cleveland, look, this is what we do. Okay, we're going to come out in 12 personnel. 1, we're going to run inside zone, and we're going to mash you for 10 yards right off the bat. And then if we want, then we'll hit Cole Beasley. Then we'll get Jason Witten kind of freed up here eventually for a touchdown off of a great play design. Scott Linehan's in a nice groove right now. Zeke's in a nice groove right now. Dak's in a nice groove. The defense is playing opportunistic football. I think they'll be one of the final 4 teams in the division when it comes down to trying to get to the Super Bowl here. I want to see if Seattle can have one of those second-half surges like they've had over the past couple of years in terms of getting this offensive line straightened out so the offense can help support the defense. I think they'll still be there.
Let me add a couple of things I saw yesterday that have really impressed me kind of under the radar, aside from the obvious. They played a remarkably clean game, and that's hard to do with a rookie running back and a rookie quarterback. 0 turnovers and 4 penalties. And the other thing they did was they got Zeke out of there. He did his work, 18 carries, and then they lightened the load on him, and they gave Alfred Morris 17 carries. Zeke Elliott is going to play more football this year than at any time in his career. So you have to make sure you don't overwork him so he has gas in the tank in the second half and into the postseason. I thought it was maybe it was obvious that you have this game salted away. You take him out of there or you don't overwork him. But 17 carries, 90-plus yards, he got his work done, and then you get him out of the game and preserve him for later in the season. That's good coaching as well.
Listen, all the things that are happening on offense we kind of thought would happen. A lot of people said Zeke will be top 5 in total yards from scrimmage for the year. He's a leading rusher in the league right now. Dak certainly has been that surprise, but a lot of it, again, built around the offensive line. You have Witten, who's been in the league for 50 years, it seems. You have other weapons. To me, it's been the defense that has picked up a lot of the slack. We thought, I mean, they just every pass rusher they had was suspended. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were like, well, where are they going to get their rush from? What are they going to do? But, you know, they're 10th overall, if you want to go into stats, 10th defensively. I think that's been huge for them. Their offense is going to be – rarely are you going to see their offense get dominated. Yeah. Rarely are you going to see that O-line get dominated to where Dak and Zeke can't have some success back there. To me, it's going to be – the question is going to be, are you going to get in shootouts? Yep. You know, is your defense going to falter at times to where now Dak's going to have to make a lot of plays with his arm to stay in a game? That's going forward. You know, you play Pittsburgh next. You're a game removed from Ben coming back from injury, where he's 2-6 coming back from injury. If they can get that potent offense going again, and you get in a shootout, you know they're
fresh. The defense is fresh because they're not left on the field for 35 minutes.
Right. You know what? I think the light has come on for this organization overall. Most times you see defenses lead the way and kind of bring an offense along as an offense trying to find its way. Well, it's kind of different here. The offense has been carrying this football team. Yep. They've been playing a brand of football that allows the defense not to have to play so many plays, but eventually get their footing. You know who they kind of mirror to me? Is a team we saw late last night. The Oakland Raiders, although they're a little bit different as far as the quarterback being a little bit more experienced in the backs, like Latavius Murray having more time, but they kind of built it the same way there. The light came on for the front office. A lot of these players are starting to like really produce now. The offensive line for the Raiders, the offensive line for the Raiders, look, Dallas's offensive line may be here. The Raiders' offensive line is right here now. Right there. They're mashing you too. They play offensive football. The defense is starting to come along here. Secondary is playing better. Khalil Mack shows up last night. Bruce Irvin shows up. So I think those two teams right now are probably two of the most exciting teams in the league because of how things have come along for them, how young they are, and how I think the offense has really provided a spark for the defense, which is something you don't really see a whole lot of. I think we're used to the defenses leading the way right now.
Mike and Mike, Lewis, Riddick, Tommy Waddle in our studio, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guest on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, you pointed it out, Mike, Cowboys-Steelers next week. Teams that obviously bring back a lot of memories for those of us older fans, and that's an interesting game. And then the Seahawks will play the Patriots. So some big games on next week's schedule. Seahawks will be playing on a short week. They play Buffalo tonight with a banged-up Russell Wilson. From what I'm reading, a lot of people in Seattle wanted Wilson to sit this game out, and he's basically said, no way, Jose, he's playing. So we'll see what they do tonight against Rex and company. That's actually an interesting game tonight.
Very much so, because I'll tell you what what it'll force them to do is, look, they have to get the running game going. It cannot be first down 2 yards, second down 2 yards, third and long, Russell run around and do something, create something for us and bail us out so we can get a new fresh set of downs.
We can't do that anymore because he's too banged up.
That's right. It's just not built that way. So now it's almost like they're forced to say, look, offensive line, you saw what the Miami Dolphins did to the Buffalo Bills a couple weeks ago when Jay Ajayi just ripped them apart. Because Rex, look, every play, I mean, I've never seen a defense run so many different things in the course of a game as the Buffalo Bills and take as many chances as they do. Maybe Seattle can get that going for them tonight. And again, Tommy, in the second half of the season, if the offensive line can start pulling its weight and Russell can somehow get healthy to the point where he can be a little bit of the old Russell Wilson, they still play championship caliber defense. So you're just hoping that this is one of those games where they can establish who they have been in the past, which is we're going to run it on you first, then we'll let Russell do his thing, and then when we get ahead of you, hey, we hope you can kind of like withstand the pressure that our defense will put on you.
This has been their pattern for the last several years, is that they play their best football in the second half of the season. They peak at the right time, and then they roll through the playoffs. Can they do that this year? Yeah. I'm not so sure because Russell's banged up and because that offensive line is just not creating any space.
It may not be good enough. Yeah. It just may not be good enough.
Two good tests for him tonight, and then you said the short week and then travel in New England.
You know what's interesting? We talk about the Oakland Raiders offensive line and how much they have invested in it. I'm not sure there's a team that has invested less in their offensive line than the Seattle Seahawks, and we're seeing why they're struggling.
Yep.
All right, yesterday, as I mentioned, I was following Louis Riddick. He was salty at different times, and then others. I could not retweet this enough times. My only complaint with Twitter is that they'll only let you retweet something once. I wanted to retweet multiple times a tweet that you had now 16 hours ago. I'll retweet it again. and it says, close the door on the Fitz era, that's enough. And I believe it was after the jump ball interception to no one that he threw in the corner of the end zone. It got bailed out by that because the Dolphins punter dropped the punt, and the Jets went in and scored. And they had a chance to win the game to give up a kick return, and that's it. Now it's over. So, but your thoughts on the Ryan Fitzpatrick decision that the Jets, at least for the moment, feel as though they've made to keep him as their starter?
I don't, Greeny. I mean, I don't understand. I'm exasperated about this thing, quite honestly, and I'm not really a Jets fan, although I'm a Todd Bowles fan, and I respect him tremendously because I've known the man a long, long time. But the quarterback situation just is beyond me. You know, look, Ryan is who he is. We've talked about it on here. He's been a turnover machine his entire career. He just has been. He's not a starter. He's a backup. He's supposed to play 3-4 games, get your starter, so your starter can come back from injury or something like that, and then he's back to the bench helping support the number one guy. Because his decision-making, the longer you expose him out there, is exactly what you saw yesterday. And the number two, I don't understand why they keep running the ball down on the goal line, down in the red area. Throwing the ball and putting the ball in his hands. I don't understand that. I mean, it's like, well, I know he has a great relationship with Chan Gailey, and I know these two have had some of their best years together, but I just don't get it. It's annoying because when you look at that defense, and I know the Dolphins fans like to get after me because I've been all over that franchise, and I kind of, going into that game yesterday, said Jay Ajayi won't go over 100 yards. And you know what? Jay Ajayi was getting stoned yesterday. Leonard Williams and those guys were owning that game until late when Ryan just started to play, Ryan Fitz turnover and throwing the football all over the place and giving it to other. That's when they started breaking down late in the game. And I'm going, see, that they're wasting a championship caliber front, the secondary notwithstanding because they've had their issues. But this team should be better than that. And you know how it goes. Golic, you see when the quarterback turns the ball over like that and the defense is sitting there going, are you kidding me? He's doing it again and again and again. And you know what happens? Yeah. Subconsciously, you start losing your edge because you get tired of it. And I'm telling you, I see the Jets team just getting tired of seeing this kind of same thing play itself out. And we're watching the game. We're sitting over there in the green room watching the game. We're going, he's going to give it to him again. Watch. He's going to, if they put it in his hands and they don't give it to Forte, he's going to give it to him again. And the Dolphins are going to get back and boom, it happens every time.
Look, and then you have the offense versus defense dynamic that doesn't work. I played on some bad offenses in Chicago where we would come onto the field and Richard Dent would look at all of us offensive players and say, just hold them because we'll be back and we'll score.
Or say something else.
But we're the offense, and Rich is telling us to hold them. What do you mean to hold them?
I'm with you. Same thing in Philly. We went through this, especially when the injury started at the quarterback position in Randall. We had the old defense, and that crossover could be interesting at times. How do you just do it, or do you try and find a spot for Petty? Because in the next game they're playing the Rams. The Rams aren't great, but you know what is great? Their D-line. So do you wait till after that game because you have a bye to prepare more? But unfortunately, after the bye, you play the Patriots. England, yeah.
So
it's
Bryce
almost like just get him in there.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Bryce has been. Look, just put him in. I'm over that now. I'm just over it. I know. You know what? After he threw the interception, Green, he comes back the next drive and he throws a touchdown pass. On the back, the little short post in the back of the end zone, I'm going, that
good throw.
Yeah, it was. But you know what? I've just seen enough of his resume to know that in the end he's going to regress back to what he is. And that's not to be disrespectful to the guy because he's had a long career and he's made a lot of money. And if you can play it down in the NFL, you're one of the best football players in the world.
Next week.
But the expectations here aren't just about can you play in the NFL for the Jets. The expectations are supposed to be about when can you start to challenge the New England Patriots? When can anybody rise up and challenge those guys? And that's what the Jets were hoping to do this year.
I don't understand what's going on with the quarterback situation with the Jets or the Rams, to be honest with you.
Fans were chanting, "We want Goff" yesterday.
Goff. Could it be that Goff is just not ready in their eyes? I mean, is that possible? I mean, that he's still – they don't think he can handle – that would be amazing.
You know what? I guess in their eyes, it's possible. In their eyes. I guess it is. Yeah. When Dak Prescott came out in the draft, right, there were a bunch of people who also said, Dak, because of the offense that he played in, it's going to be a learning curve, and he's not going to be able to handle it. Well, Scott Linehan and Jason Garrett said, well, guess what? We'll develop some things for him and help him come along here, and we'll surround him with some people and get him moving here. Coaching, you know what? We could go on. We could do a whole show about this. When we talked about it here, about the fact that it's just not on Jared Goff. If it's just the fact that you guys have it all figured out and he's not ready to play, then you made a colossal mistake picking the wrong guy because you had your pick of the top two guys. And you had your pick of Dak Prescott and anyone else you wanted.
You've spoken about this, I think, in the past. The quarterback coaching element in this league has not been very good. I mean, struggling to coach up a young quarterback, hard to do.
And this, again, it's not to take shots at people, but this league is not created equal across all 32 franchises. It's just not. You could not take let's just say whoever the top-rated quarterback prospect was, and just say on all 32 of those teams, he's going to be either this or this. I mean, we've seen it.
Yeah.
I saw it in my own career as a struggling defensive back trying to stay in the league. When I came into the league and played for the Atlanta Falcons and then went to the Cleveland Browns and started getting coached by Saban and Belichick, I went from kindergarten to grad school in about one practice. It was like, oh, boy, I don't know anything.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I know nothing about defensive back play, and they let me know it, believe me.
The best of Mike and Mike.
I'm looking at a few more of these tweets. Robert tweets at us, hey, Greeny, since the Raiders are in first, are they going to finish in first place? Hashtag Raider Nation. It's a tough division, Mike. You pointed out the Chiefs have a win in hand.
I think it's a battle with the Chiefs. The Chiefs, you look at the way the Raiders are doing it, this young quarterback, Amari Cooper, flashy receiver, big old line, just running. The Chiefs are anything but flashy. They're the least flashy team there is, but can be an effective team, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. And the Chiefs do have a win in Oakland. So I do think it's going to be a battle between those two teams.
And the Chiefs, I would caution you not to read too much into yesterday because they were banged up a little bit yesterday. But when Alex Smith is back, when Spencer Ware's there, when Justin Houston comes back and him and D Ford now, look, they've got that's a great old-fashioned AFC West battle now between those two. Plus, let's not throw Denver out yet. They still have a lot of pride there, and they'll be better down the stretch, too. I think Trevor Siemian, quite honestly, I know a lot of people don't like him. I know people yesterday, there was one of the groups of people on Twitter I was getting after saying Trevor Siemian can't throw the ball. He can throw the long ball. They're just going to have to open it up. They're just going to have to let it fly with him and let him just kind of take some shots and let him take some chances. I think it's the best division in football at the AFC West. I think it's the most exciting, the top three teams.
I by the way, will differ a little bit. I'm throwing Denver out. I'm saying they're done. I don't think – listen, by record, that's a ridiculous statement for me to make, but if you're asking me to look forward, I think it'll be a battle between Kansas City and Oakland.
They also have by far the best last team of any division. San Diego's fun to watch.
Sure.
Yes,
they're not bad.
I was so close to clicking on him for DraftKings yesterday. Oh, he got off.
Look, a year ago, Melvin Gordon was being considered a guy who didn't break enough tackles, was a guy who really didn't run with good vision, didn't have enough instincts, and now all of a sudden the guy looks like – he looks like Chuck Muncie with better lateral agility.
Yeah, and then the first touchdown pass.
For all you people who don't know who Chuck Muncie is.
Look it up. Google him. Is Phillips to or Rivers to Gates. It's like their 30,000th touchdown together. They're another one. I said it's like Witten has played forever. It's like these two have played forever as well.
Yeah, this is a scary team now.
Tim Guccione tweets, what needs to be mentioned is the Giants finally got a lead and held it all game. Yeah. Certainly wasn't without sweating it out late in that contest yesterday. No. Megatron tweets at us. I'm sure it's not that Megatron. No. Tweets, Wentz desperately needs a go-to guy, someone who can actually catch the ball consistently. Look, they don't have a great team around Carson Wentz.
No, they don't. And I think because of how hot the season started for them and how good Carson was looking against some inferior defenses, we were cautioning people to say, hey, look, he's going to hit some bumps in the road. They're going to play better competition, and some of their deficiencies from a roster standpoint are going to show. They're starting to show.
One more I want to read here, and then we'll get to the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Christopher tweets, how can you leave Zeke Elliott out of the MVP talk? I said earlier this morning, right now my MVP is Derek Carr. I know some people, Mike, you brought up Matt Ryan.
I think it's Matt Ryan, Derek Carr, and Tom Brady. Zeke Elliott.
How about Zeke Elliott?
Leading the league in rushing right now.
There's some very good players at the top end of this league right now when you're talking about the MVP discussion. And let's not also forget Matthew Stafford. Because what he did yesterday, he went right at the heart of the Minnesota Vikings defense when he needed to. And when that touchdown pass to Golden Tate, two of the Vikings' best players had him doubled on that play. Harrison Smith and Xavier Rhodes. How many teams do that? Look, Matthew Stafford, I know it's not one of those names that people want to have associated with the MVP just by virtue of the fact that it's the Lions. But this kid is playing lights out since the middle of last year. It's a fun time, I believe, for as much flack as the NFL is taking over the quality of the product and these hits with Cam Newton not being called and all. There really is some good individual performances here and some teams that right now give people a reason to really tune in and watch and be excited.
We can make that our MVP moment of the week, brought to you by Sport Clips. Help fund scholarships for U.S. veterans. Donate to the Help a Hero program at a Sport Clips near you. I'm going to hold off Aaron Rodgers to the top of the hour because I want a little lengthier conversation about that. So let's stay there on Stafford. I was reading something very interesting on Pro Football Talk that I hadn't seen, that with about a minute and change left in the fourth quarter of that game yesterday, there was a stoppage, and Jim Caldwell went to the officials and lobbied to have 2 extra seconds put back on the clock. They put 2 extra seconds on the clock. Did anyone see how regulation ended in that game?
Yeah.
They threw a ball down the middle of
Right
the field with no timeouts left, and they clocked it with 2 seconds left to allow Prater to come on and kick a 58-yard field goal to tie it.
I mean, like it was a chip shot.
Let me tell you, there have been some awful kicking moments in the NFL this season. That guy is money, Matt Prater.
It's amazing how just kicking extra points has really gotten into and affected the psyche in a negative way of kickers across the league. Every extra point now you're going, well, it's not one of those where you get up and go get a beer, go get something to drink, or whatever, go to the bathroom. It's like, let's just see what happens here. And you're right, to hit that kind of kick in that kind of moment in that kind of environment, that's huge. And hats off to Jim Caldwell for doing that then, because those are the kind of things in a league that is designed to have tight games, that makes all the difference in the world.
And listen, this is a team, we gave you the stat earlier. The Detroit Lions are one of only 2 teams that has trailed in the fourth quarter of every game they've played this year. The Browns are the other. They're winless. The Lions are 5-4.
They have a winning record trailing in the fourth quarter of every single game. It's amazing.
And look, the Vikings, whom they beat yesterday, are clearly coming back to earth after a 5-0 start.
Question.
The Packers are struggling to figure out an identity.
The Bears, forget them.
And the Lions win that division?
Yeah, they could. And you know what? And to go back to the MVP conversation quick, Greeny, what is a better indication of the value of a player than when your opposition knows what you have to do? They know that you're playing basically one-handed, meaning you're going to have to throw the football and move the ball down the field. And the Lions are constantly putting Matthew Stafford in that position, or they're putting themselves in that position, and he's rising to the occasion every time.
Hey everybody, Scott Burnside, ESPN.com here on the latest edition of Hockey Today, the podcast. We hear from New Jersey Devils captain Andy Green, talking about the Devils' surprising start, and Milan Lucic of the Edmonton Oilers joins us.
Louis Riddick, you were just saying during the break, LSU-Alabama this weekend is a game that if it were played in the NFL, people would be talking about how the league is so boring. Mm-hmm. And yet I thought that was a scintillating college football game from the opening kick.
Yeah, you know what? And I think that's because obviously fantasy football is such a huge component of the NFL attraction that people can play that. And so they want to see scoring. They want to see touchdowns. They want to see long passes and all that. But look, football really – I guess it's in the beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. That Alabama game, LSU game, that's as good as it gets for me. I'm on a plane trying to get up here, and I'm sitting there, trying to watch my phone on the plane. I'm getting yelled at about turning my phone off and stuff. I'm going, do you understand what's happening right here? Do you understand what's being done to kind of work Bama's putting in here? And the airline flight attendant's looking at me like, I really don't care.
And I'm with you. I mean, it is the eye of the beholder. Do you like that high scoring game? Or I love this. Who's gonna get that play? Is Fournette gonna bust one off? Is Hurts gonna? And he ends up doing with the 21-yard touchdown. Or when is that play gonna happen? There's gonna be a big turnover on defense. I loved that game.
I'll say this about Alabama. And I'll say this about that coach, and I've said it numerous times. What you're witnessing there with that program is unprecedented. It's how good they are. I mean, it's ridiculous how fundamentally on the defensive side of the football, just how good they are. And remember this name. No one's saying this name. Jeremy Pruitt, the defensive coordinator down there. Nobody down there is really remembering Kirby Smart right now. And Kirby Smart was one of the best coaches in college football. Jeremy Pruitt. Don't forget that name.
We got David Pollack ready to go from College Game Day and so much more. David, you hear the conversation here. Your thoughts first and foremost. We'll work our way down to some of the rankings here. But your thoughts on LSU-Alabama this weekend?
Well, I love it. I love what you're talking about, too, because I'm also a defensive guy. So I think me and Golic can appreciate that, obviously, a lot more than most people. But, what he just said about Jeremy Pruitt is something to be on notice about, too, Louis, because I think everybody thought when Kirby left that they might lose something. Well, I think the defense is different. I think it's more predictable. I think they do less and they're confused less. I think Alabama plays faster because of it, and I think their defense it's better than it was a year ago. It's better than it was 4 years ago. They got more versatile parts and they're using them. So I had a blast, standing on the sidelines, and you just look at those guys and the way they fill out their uniforms, the way they move, the way holes open up and close as quick as they did, and it was one of the treats. And it goes back to that 9-6 game a couple years ago when you just got NFL players all over the field, and I enjoyed it.
I've got two quick stats for you on that game. First off, Lewis, you mentioned Nick Saban. It was his 200th win as a college coach. He's the third fastest in major college history to get to that number behind Joe Paterno and Tom Osborne. And then, Mike, we talk about that Alabama defense. Leonard Fournette was held to 35 yards rushing, his lowest total since he was held to 31 yards
last year
against Alabama last year. He has averaged 4 fewer yards per rush against Alabama than against any other team in his career.
They're so fundamentally sound on that side of the ball. It is ridiculous. So, David, as we get ready for another ranking out there, you get Bama just wins 10-0. Clemson blows out Syracuse. Michigan, they blow out, Maryland?
They killed Maryland.
Whoever
they played, they killed them.
And Washington blows out Cal. And then Ohio State has probably the best win because they blow out number 10 Nebraska. Do you think, and to me, not that it matters if Washington wins out, they're going to be in. Do you think Ohio State jumps Washington in this next vote?
I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I think the committee, again, that's a top 10 win. I don't think anybody really thought Nebraska was a top 10 team. I think they're a good team. I don't know they're a top 10 team. But they were in the top 10, and with Ohio State notching that victory, again, Oklahoma they still have on their resume. They still have other good wins on their resume. So I think there's a chance you'll see Ohio State at 4, and I think you'll see Washington at 5, and everybody gets to be upset and be mad. But it really, again, it's not going to matter. Washington still has to continue to do what they're going to do. If I had a guess, last week I thought Washington would be at 5. This week, I think because of the knee-jerk reaction, I think Washington will be at 4, but nobody's going to be surprised if Ohio State is.
As you point out, the two, if they are 5, 2 teams that are ahead of them will play each other as it continues. So you're right, they would be fine. For what it's worth, our FPI, our Football Power Index, says according to strength of record, it is about as hard to go 9-0 against Washington's schedule as it is to go 8-1 against Ohio State's schedule. The Buckeyes also rank higher in FPI, which is a forward-looking measure of team strength. So there's a debate there at number 4. Let me throw one other Big Ten team into this conversation for you, if I may, David Pollack, and get your thoughts. I was there this weekend at Northwestern, and I watched Wisconsin play. Wisconsin has an overtime loss to Ohio State. They have a 7-point loss to Michigan. Right now they have the inside track to get to the Big Ten championship game. If they get there and win, they would, by definition, be avenging one of those 2 losses. So they would be a 2-loss team with 2 extremely impressive losses. Do you see any path for them to get into the Final Four?
Yes, I think under that scenario, you could. I think there's 2 2-loss teams that have a good chance of making the college football playoff. I think it's them, and I think it's Auburn. Now, the thing about Wisconsin is I think Northwestern's a pretty good team. I think Clayton Thorson, if you watch him, is really impressive. Makes great throws all over the field. Justin Jackson, I know Greeny, I think you were there, weren't you?
I was, and they shut him down like no one has shut him down all year.
They did. They shut him down, and they continue to be banged up. I mean, losing their nose guard. They've lost 2 backers. T.J. Watt was banged up, but makes a tremendous 4th-down stop in that game early on that really set the tone. He might have scored on Justin Jackson might have scored on that play. So I think Wisconsin 100% can be in the mix. I don't think they can do it because I don't think they have the offensive firepower. That's what you watch them. They're still doing the quarterback thing where they're rotating and trying to find a spark, but either way, I don't think they throw the ball enough. I don't think they're explosive enough to run the table and to beat an Ohio State and to beat a Michigan in the championship game. But I do think they can make life heck on people with that defensive front 7.
I think so many people would love to see Louisville make it in because of the explosive play of Lamar Jackson, 7 touchdowns he was responsible for in that Boston College game, 45 now in the year, just ridiculous. He's like pinball numbers, so people want to see him in there. How difficult, though? They really have a bit of a road to get in there, don't they?
They do, Mike, but here's the deal. I can promise you one thing. As much as me and Lewis just loved on LSU and that Alabama game, if Lamar Jackson was playing quarterback for LSU, he would have had plenty of success, and he would have success against Alabama. If you're talking about a number 4 seed, Louisville versus Alabama, that would be one of the most fun matchups I think you could ever predict. I don't think Washington would have a chance against Alabama. I don't think it would be a great game. Louisville, I think, could give Nick Saban and Alabama all they could handle because they do play physical defense. They do have a lot of variety in their defense. They do blitz. They're aggressive. They can make plays against that offense, but they also, more importantly, have the biggest playmaker in college football who would Nick Saban would be pulling his hair out trying to find ways to continually defend that cat. So we can talk all we want about Louisville, and we can talk about their schedule and what they are. To me, they're in the top four, right? I mean, if you're going to go best teams, they lost to Clemson, I know, but if you're going to go best teams, I think Louisville's in the top four.
You know, David, you make an interesting point right there when you're talking about Lamar Jackson and that kind of player being the kind of player that Nick wants to see the least, the kind of guy that can just get out in space and really challenge his football team and not allow his football team to play in a phone booth where they absolutely will just knock you out anyway. Who else in this top four, top five, you know, out of Clemson, out of Michigan, who else do you think would really present a great football game for Alabama? Because, I mean, we all talk about Bama like they're unbeatable, but is it Clemson? Is it Michigan? You know, Michigan's probably the team that's the most intriguing to me because I haven't been able to see them enough from start to finish to really get a beat on how good this football team is. Would they provide the kind of challenge to Alabama that some of these other teams, well, a team like Louisville, although they don't have a Lamar Jackson type of quarterback on that team, do they have enough to really challenge a team like Alabama?
I don't think, Lewis, when we watch Bama and we watch the Kryptonite, and we've seen over the past several years that guys that beat him are guys that can do something with their legs. Wilton Speight can't do anything with his legs. He's not immobile in the pocket, but he's a more pro-style quarterback. I don't think they have dynamic running backs or dynamic receivers that really threaten you. So I know Alabama can play man coverage. Clemson, you got dynamic receivers. You got a dynamic quarterback. You got experience against this team already. So I think I put Clemson and Louisville in those categories that really could challenge Alabama, that could beat Alabama. Listen, LSU's got, they got freaks all over the field, and they got speed all over the field, and you saw they were able to do some damage. But also that atmosphere is worth 7 points. That atmosphere is worth 10 points to be that crazy and to confuse and to give you adrenaline and momentum. So, now you look at the schedule and you got Auburn at home. I think they could challenge, Alabama as well, but Sean White's not completely healthy right now. He's not a dynamic runner either. He can do enough to keep you off balance, but I think Auburn's a team that aren't going to be afraid of them, that could scare them, and then Clemson and Louisville are teams I think they could scare them as well.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Donovan McNabb, who is still basking in the celebration of the Cubs World Series championship and subsequent parade, very proudly this morning wearing his Chicago Cubs World Series shirt. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Don't say guys. I didn't congratulate you.
You wanted to say it.
I've never seen you.
I felt the energy.
I've never seen you sit up so straight in your life.
My back was bothering me a little bit. Just wanted to stretch it out a little bit.
Congrats to your Cubs. That was a heck of a series, a heck of a Game 7, that's for sure.
Thank you.
But congrats to your Cubs. It was an excellent World Series. The ratings really bore that out as well. It was fantastic. It's just a shame the wrong.
Did you really just go to the ratings?
That's all I'm going to stick with, man.
Golic was excited about the ratings.
The ratings.
I wouldn't be excited about a win.
The Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Quickly on that, I read this to you earlier this morning. Mm-hmm. Did you see the note that the parade and subsequent rally in Grant Park and everything in Chicago was a gathering of 5 million people? Mm-hmm. It was the 7th largest gathering in human history. Mm-hmm. And the largest in American history. Here's what it trails. Number 1 was a pilgrimage in India. Mm-hmm. The next was a festival in Iraq. The next was a funeral in India, then a funeral in Iran, then a papal gathering in the Philippines, then World Youth Day, and then the Chicago Cubs World Series celebration. So which thing in there doesn't sound like it belongs with the others?
I can easily say, hey, they're in good company, but that's not what you're supposed to say.
No.
That's like, that doesn't flow. But
number 8 is a funeral. It's unbelievable.
We got funerals, and of the top ones, the earliest was what, 1969? It was a funeral in India, 15 million. Others were 89, 2013, 2014, 2015.
The entire population of the United States in the census of 1800 was 5 million people.
Right.
That's how many people were at the Cubs celebration on Friday.
And there are a lot more that was trying to get there. They blocked off a lot of the access to get down there to Grant Park. A lot of people went down Addison and Clark and those particular streets, weren't able to go all the way back down to Grant Park because they shut things down. So it probably would have been a lot more.
And it was extraordinarily, from everything I know, and I'm sure there may be something that I have missed, and so don't hold me to this, but it seems to have been extraordinarily peaceful, right? People just had a good time and celebrated and partied in a city that has had so many difficult moments this year. For the city to be able to have a celebration of that magnitude and have it go off as it did.
And listen, the city's had themselves a few championship parades. There's no doubt about that. I get it. This is bigger than them all because of the magnitude of the Cubs and the drought. But still, it's not like it's a city where the people are saying, there's a parade. Where do we go? What do we do here? You guys have had a little bit of practice there.
There's a progression with this whole deal. Think about it. When the Bulls won their first championship, it wasn't that many people that showed up. A lot of people probably didn't even know what was going on at that time. Then they continued to win championships. Then you add the Blackhawks into there, the White Sox winning the World Series, and then now the Cubs finally doing it. I was just trying to go through research of how many states with their given teams all have won multiple championships. And I'm glad that Chicago is in that ranking right now.
So
sorry, Golic. I didn't really mean to bring that up.
Golic, you
still got the Browns
this year too.
Yep.
And I heard Browns, and it threw me off.
Well, you have the Cavs.
I do have the Cavs, yes.
Well,
that's the
they've already won one, so.
It wasn't that long ago. It's not like we're going back to ancient times.
But LeBron, I think LeBron jinxed them a little bit with that whole party deal.
The 3-1?
Yeah, the whole party deal.
With cookies and cupcakes.
Yeah, that was one in which, for as a professional, that's something you don't do. You don't throw a party and try to, rehearse the whole thing that happened in the series. If you're throwing a Halloween party, have another theme. Don't do that because that makes LeBron look bad at this point.
I would certainly could have that conversation. I'm with you, but I don't believe in the whole jinx thing. And I hope the desserts were good.
I strongly believe in it. Yeah. Donovan is here giving us the Straight Talk. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. Donovan, the question of the day to me is as follows. If we all agree that the New England Patriots are the team to beat in the AFC and probably the entire NFL, are the Oakland Raiders their biggest threat?
In the AFC?
Start with that.
The thing that I look at the Oakland Raiders, we can talk offense and Derek Carr with the, being a candidate for the MVP. We're just pulled back by the emergence of Amari Cooper being a top 3, top 5 receiver in this league. Crabtree's playing outstanding. Latavius Murray. Their offensive line, I think, deserves a little bit more credit. Donald Penn has been one of the best tackles in the game, and you wonder why Tampa Bay let him go. And I think right now they're wondering why. But their defense, to me, they're awful. Let's just take Khalil Mack out of the equation. And he was, only had, I think, 4 sacks leading up into this game. But it was one of me. Their defense, they've been getting shredded all throughout the season. And I don't know how long this offense can carry the load for this defense because I think when you get to the later part of the season, your defense has to carry the football team. And I don't think they're capable of doing that. So I would have to say the Denver Broncos probably have an edge because I think they'll beat Oakland in Denver. And I think Trevor Siemian will protect the football, and we'll start to see him get back to running the football, being a little bit sound as far as offense is concerned, being balanced, and defense start to take over.
Mike, you said earlier this morning you're kind of ready to put Denver to the side.
I am. I put Denver. I don't think they're. Listen, if they
because of Trevor Siemian,
if they get taken out of their game and they had to play catch up, I don't think they can do that. They didn't run the ball well at all. Trevor's got to throw the ball. He didn't throw it all that well.
Right.
And if that defense the defense got shredded between the tackles. So my thought is, the more later you go into the season, you know this.
Yeah.
As a quarterback, if you have a great running attack, how much does that help you? And this Oakland Raider rushing attack, because of the money they put up front to those guys and how well they're running the ball, I think that can carry them. I think that can take, if you think Denver's their best threat, my answer would be they can take Denver out of their game and make Trevor Siemian have to beat you or just shred that defensive line, especially up the gut running the ball. And I think they can handle that business.
It's funny we're looking at a sense for Denver of running the football. C.J. Anderson was their guy, and then he gets banged up. Now Trevor Siemian starting the season out. Everyone thought, oh, well, this is the guy that's been following Peyton, and he's learned so much from Peyton. Well, when you're out there and the lights are on, you get exposed. Mm-hmm. And I think right now Trevor Siemian is starting to get a little bit exposed. You wonder about his confidence. But yet still, in Kubiak's offense, I think they get back to running the football effectively with their three-headed monster. I think the offensive line kind of gets shored up with – and the defense – they have injuries on defense. With Aqib Talib coming back, also we'll find out what happened with Wolf last night. I think it'll be something severe for a couple weeks, but still get back for playoff time. I just think Kansas City and Denver, when everyone gets back healthy, I think now we start to talk, okay, how good really is the Oakland Raiders, and can their defense be able to hold enough for them to win?
Yeah, well, that's why I think it's Kansas City. I picked Kansas City to win the division, and I think they are there. Remember, Oakland's one division loss is at home against Kansas City.
Right.
So Kansas City has that one in hand. So I actually like Kansas City still for the division.
I hear what you're saying. I picked them to win the division, too. I don't like the Chiefs if they get in a shootout either, though. I don't like Denver in a shootout. I don't like the Chiefs in a shootout. I like Derek Carr in a shootout.
I will say this. Now, it's a little bit different now when you have Nick Foles at the quarterback position because you can throw downfield. Mm-hmm. The thing with Alex Smith is he's not a downfield thrower. He's an intermediate passer that will be accurate and complete some passes, somewhat Sam Bradford.
Is Foles going to displace Smith in Kansas City?
Well, that could be the future at this particular point because now with the injuries and he's not young. You know, Alex Smith is starting to get up there in age, and when you're not able to throw the football effectively downfield when you were somewhat young, now you're older. Yeah, Nick Foles may be the way to go because now you can open up the playbook a little bit more from what we did in Philly, and Nick Foles is used to that.
Get Ware back. You know, he was injured. Macklin got injured. Kelsey got himself thrown out of the game.
Thrown out of the game a little bit.
Move, so.
One more on the AFC, and then we'll break shortly. We'll come back with the NFC where there's one real head-scratcher going on, and that's Pittsburgh.
Right.
Ben comes back, didn't practice at all. Do we just chalk that up to nothing? Are we?
You know what? The whole thing about it, the Pittsburgh Steelers go as long as Ben Roethlisberger take them. It seems to me with Landry Jones, they have no confidence in. It seems he's the guy in the huddle that everyone's looking at and wondering, man, when is Ben coming back? And for Antonio Brown and for Le'Veon Bell, they have to run the football a little bit better than what we've seen with Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, he can catch the ball out of the backfield, but you need to establish the run game. There is no reason why a guy's coming off an MCL and you're going 5 wides, 4 wides.
I agree.
And you have one of the best running backs in the game.
First game they're playing, they got empty backfield. And
against one of the best defenses in the league,
too. I mean, I know Pouncey's out at center, but still I agree with you. I think they need to establish that run a little more because their defense ain't helping a whole lot.
And I say that the sleeper of the AFC will be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they get in probably at around 9-7, 10-6 when Ben continues to get healthy. The question now is how does he recover from playing in the game Sunday? How is he going to feel Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, at this particular point? Because if he gets stronger as he can continue on, then they'll begin to rise. But if he doesn't, I don't know.
And again, that stat, when he comes off of injury, his first game back, he's now 2-6. So it's kind of showing that with the first game back from injury, sometimes maybe he comes back a little soon. Maybe
he hasn't been healthy since like 2009, I think.